A legacy under siege. Lucas Bennett never imagined he'd have to fight for the land that had been in his family for over a century. The Bennett Ranch, a sprawling 300-acre property outside of Willow Creek, had been his grandfather's pride and joy. Though Lucas had left for the city to pursue a career in finance, he always believed the ranch would be waiting for him, untouched, a symbol of his family's legacy. That belief was shattered when he received an urgent phone call from Evelyn Porter, his grandfather's longtime neighbor. "Lucas, they're building on your land." Her voice trembled with rage. "Bulldozers, surveyors, the whole lot. They started tearing up the fields this morning." At first, Lucas thought she was mistaken. Maybe some construction crew had accidentally crossed the boundary. But when Evelyn sent him a photo of a massive sign reading, "Future home of Willow Ridge, luxury living from $600,000, his blood ran cold. His land stolen. Lucas grabbed his keys, threw a bag in his truck, and raced back to Willow Creek. As he turned onto the familiar dirt road, his heart pounded at the sight of towering machines tearing into the soil. Something was terribly wrong. And he was going to find out why. The battle begins. Lucas Bennett's hands gripped the steering wheel as he sped down the dirt road toward his family's ranch. His heart pounded as the scene before him unfolded. Towering bulldozers carving into the land, surveyors marking sections with bright orange flags, and towering banners that read, "Willow Ridge Estates, a premier community." This wasn't a mistake. Lucas slammed his truck into park and stormed toward the chaos. Workers in hard hats barely acknowledged him as they continued their destruction. A woman in a crisp navy blue suit stood near a temporary office, her arms crossed as she supervised the work. Unlike the dust-covered laborers, she looked pristine, her blonde hair neatly styled, her posture rigid with authority. "Excuse me," Lucas barked, marching toward her. "What the hell is going on here?" She turned slowly, giving him a cool, assessing look. "We're preparing for development," she said, her voice smooth and controlled. "I'm Victoria Langley, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. And you are?" Lucas clenched his jaw. "The owner of this land." Victoria raised a perfectly arched eyebrow. "That's impossible. This land was purchased last year by Willow Ridge Development. We have all the necessary approvals." Lucas shook his head. "My grandfather, William Bennett, owned this ranch for over 60 years. He passed away recently, and I inherited it. He would never have sold this land." Victoria's smile was practiced but cold. "Perhaps he didn't tell you," she said, tilting her head in mock sympathy. "The sale was finalized 11 months ago." Lucas's stomach twisted. 11 months ago, his grandfather had been in the hospital, barely able to get out of bed. There was no way he had signed anything. "I want to see the paperwork," Lucas demanded. Victoria reached into her designer bag and handed him a business card. "You're welcome to contact our legal department, but I assure you everything is in order." She turned away, already pulling out her phone as if dismissing him entirely. Lucas stood frozen, rage boiling beneath his skin. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate land grab. He spun on his heel and stormed back to his truck. He needed answers. The first clue. Back at the ranch house, Evelyn was waiting on the porch, worry etched across her face. "Did he ever mention selling?" Lucas asked urgently. Evelyn's eyes filled with emotion. "Never. He said this land would stay in the family forever." Lucas's mind raced. If his grandfather had been tricked into signing something while sick, maybe, just maybe, the proof was still here. He pushed open the old office door, the scent of leather and aged paper greeting him. If his grandfather had left behind something to protect this land, Lucas was going to find it. The hidden truth. Lucas Bennett tore through his grandfather's office, searching for anything, any clue that could prove this land was stolen. The room smelled of aged wood, old leather, and faint traces of the pipe tobacco his grandfather used to smoke. His desk was cluttered with farming records, ledgers, and letters dating back decades. Think, Lucas. His grandfather had been a meticulous man, keeping track of every detail. If something was off about this land deal, he would have left a trail. Lucas yanked open the filing cabinets, flipping through stacks of neatly labeled folders. Nothing about a land sale. No mention of Willow Ridge. Frustration clawed at him. Just as he was about to give up, his foot caught on something. A loose floorboard beneath the desk. His heart pounded as he knelt down and pried it open. Inside was a small metal box, locked. But on the underside of the desk, his grandfather had hidden the key. Lucas's hands trembled as he opened the box. Inside lay a stack of old property surveys, his grandfather's will naming him as the rightful heir, and a letter addressed to him in shaky but familiar handwriting. If you're reading this, Lucas, someone is trying to take what's ours. His breath hitched. They've been after this land for years. I never sold it. But they keep coming back, trying to get me to sign something. If they claim I did, it's a lie. Lucas's grip tightened on the letter. Look at the original survey from 1925. Compare it to what's recorded at the county now. The truth is in the boundaries. Lucas rifled through the documents, his pulse hammering. The original 1925 survey showed the Bennett Ranch was 300 acres. But the most recent record at the county office listed it as only 220 acres. They had stolen nearly 80 acres, exactly where Willow Ridge was being built. A dangerous discovery. Lucas sat back, stunned. This wasn't just a mistake. Someone had altered the official records. And if his grandfather was right, that meant someone had falsified legal documents to make it look like the land had been sold. He needed a lawyer. Fast. Lucas grabbed the documents and rushed outside. Just as he stepped onto the porch, his truck's windshield exploded. Crack! A bullet. He ducked, heart pounding, scanning the darkening landscape. His ranch had always been peaceful. Now someone was trying to kill him. They knew he had found the truth. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from an unknown number. Drop this now, or next time we won't miss. Lucas clenched his jaw. They had just made their biggest mistake. The fight begins. Lucas Bennett crouched behind the porch railing, heart pounding. The bullet had missed him, but not by much. He scanned the darkening fields surrounding his grandfather's ranch, searching for movement. Whoever fired that shot didn't want to scare him. They wanted to silence him. His grip tightened around the old metal box in his hands. They knew. Someone out there knew he had found the real property records. And if they were willing to shoot at him, then this was bigger than he had thought. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Leave town. Forget the land. You won't get another warning. Lucas exhaled slowly, forcing himself to think. Running wasn't an option. This wasn't just about him anymore. His grandfather had fought to protect this land for decades. Now it was his turn. He couldn't trust the local authorities. If someone had altered county records, they had connections inside. He needed outside help. His fingers hovered over his contacts before settling on a name. Daniel Grayson. A former federal investigator turned property lawyer, Daniel had helped expose land fraud cases before. If anyone could help him, it was him. Lucas hit dial. A dangerous game. Lucas? Daniel's deep voice answered on the first ring. I need help, Lucas said, voice low. Someone's trying to steal my land, and I think they just tried to kill me. That got Daniel's attention. Where are you? My ranch in Willow Creek. Stay inside. Lock your doors. I'll be there in 5 hours. Lucas hung up, adrenaline still surging through his veins. He had 5 hours before backup arrived. 5 hours to prepare for whatever was coming next. He wasn't going to sit back and wait. If they thought they could scare him off, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. Lucas grabbed his grandfather's old rifle from the cabinet and settled into a chair near the window, watching the road. If anyone came back, he'd be ready. The power play at sunrise. Daniel's black SUV pulled up the dirt driveway. He stepped out, a tall man in his 40s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Tell me everything, Daniel said, stepping inside. Lucas laid out the documents, his grandfather's letter, the original surveys, and the altered county records. Daniel studied them in silence. This is bad, he finally said. But it's also your greatest weapon. Lucas frowned. How? Daniel smirked. Because if these records are real, then Willow Ridge isn't just an illegal development. Every single home they've already built is sitting on stolen land. Lucas's pulse quickened. Which means we don't just stop the new development. We can take down the entire Willow Creek HOA and whoever's behind it. Lucas set his jaw. Now it wasn't just about saving his land. It was about bringing them all down, unraveling the conspiracy. Lucas Bennett leaned over the kitchen table, his grandfather's documents spread out like pieces of a puzzle. Across from him, Daniel Grayson tapped a pen against the edge of a faded survey map, his sharp eyes scanning every detail. This isn't just fraud, Daniel muttered. It's organized theft. Lucas clenched his jaw. So how do we stop them? Daniel leaned back. We hit them where it hurts, legally and publicly. First, we need a court injunction to stop all construction immediately. Second, we expose the people behind this. He slid a sheet of paper toward Lucas. I ran a quick background check. The development company, Willow Ridge Properties, it's a front. The same 5 names appear in every business transaction. Lucas scanned the list. Victoria Langley, Richard Calloway, Mayor Paul Hargrove, County Assessor Jim Walters, Planning Director Susan Klein. His stomach turned. These weren't just shady business people. These were local officials, the people who controlled land permits, zoning laws, and property assessments. They're all in on it, Lucas muttered. Daniel nodded. They've been targeting ranchers, forcing them to sell, or altering records to take what they want. Your grandfather was just their latest victim, but he fought back. And now, so will we. Making the first move. Lucas took a deep breath. Okay, where do we start? Daniel smirked. First, we make them panic. They drove straight to the Willow Creek County Records Office. Daniel flashed his credentials, and within an hour, they had the full case file on the Bennett Ranch. The more they read, the worse it got. Lucas's land hadn't just been stolen. It had been used as collateral for a $20 million loan, one that Victoria Langley and her associates were using to fund the rest of Willow Ridge. If the court voids the sale, Daniel said, their entire project collapses. They'll lose everything. Lucas exhaled. Let's make that happen. The public exposure. That afternoon, Lucas walked into the Willow Creek Gazette, the town's largest newspaper. Tanya McMillan, the editor, looked skeptical as she flipped through the documents. You're telling me the biggest development in town is sitting on stolen land, she asked. Not just that, Lucas said. The people running it are pocketing money while breaking the law. Tanya's eyes darkened. I can't print accusations without proof. Lucas placed his grandfather's letter on the table. Here's the proof. Tanya scanned it, then the legal surveys. After a moment, she exhaled. I hope you know what you're starting, Lucas. I do. That night, Willow Creek's biggest scandal hit the front page. The fallout begins. Lucas wasn't sure what he expected, but the reaction was immediate. By morning, the town was in chaos. Victoria Langley was about to learn that she had walked right into a trap. The storm hits. Lucas Bennett stood on his grandfather's porch at dawn, sipping a cup of coffee. He could already hear the distant murmurs of town gossip. The news had broken, and people were angry. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You just made the worst mistake of your life. Lucas smirked. We'll see about that. Just then, Daniel Grayson pulled up, stepping out of his SUV with a confident stride. Town's on fire, Lucas. Your little bombshell in the newspaper got everyone talking? Even the mayor canceled his weekly breakfast meeting. He's too busy putting out fires. Lucas exhaled. What's our next move? Daniel's smirk widened. We go for the kill. The crack in their armor. They drove to the county courthouse, where a judge had agreed to hear their emergency injunction. Inside, Victoria Langley and her team sat stiffly at the defense table. The mayor himself was there, along with Jim Walters, the county assessor. Lucas held his breath as Daniel approached the bench. Your Honor, we have irrefutable proof that the Willow Ridge development is being built on stolen land, Daniel began, placing the original property surveys in front of the judge. These documents show clear tampering with county records. Our client's land was illegally reassigned. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, flipped through the pages. She frowned. And you're telling me this wasn't caught during any official review? Daniel didn't even blink. That's because the people in charge of those reviews are the ones profiting from this scam. Victoria shot up from her seat. This is absurd. We have permits, approvals. The judge held up a hand. Miss Langley, sit down. Victoria clenched her jaw but obeyed. Then the judge turned back to Daniel. I assume you have additional evidence? Daniel nodded. Yes, Your Honor. In fact, we discovered something even worse. The final blow. Lucas slid a folder across the table. In addition to the fraudulent land transfers, Willow Ridge Properties secured a $20 million loan using this stolen land as collateral. Daniel explained. If this court rules in our favor, their entire project becomes illegal. The bank can, and will, demand immediate repayment. A stunned silence filled the courtroom. Victoria's face paled. The mayor shifted uncomfortably. The judge flipped through the evidence one last time before nodding. Effective immediately, I am granting a cease and desist order on all construction. Further, I'm ordering a full federal investigation into these fraudulent property transfers. Lucas exhaled. They had won the first battle. As the courtroom erupted into whispers, Victoria's icy glare met Lucas. You think this is over? She hissed, voice shaking. Lucas leaned in, his voice calm but firm. Oh, Victoria, it's just getting started. The empire crumbles. Lucas Bennett watched from his truck as construction crews packed up their equipment. The Willow Ridge project was officially dead. The judge's cease and desist order had sent shockwaves through the town. Within hours, the bank had frozen all funding for the development, and by the next morning, Victoria Langley's empire was falling apart. At the town hall, a crowd of furious homeowners gathered, demanding answers. Many had bought houses in Willow Ridge, believing they were making safe investments. Now they realized they had poured their life savings into stolen land. Victoria tried to control the damage, standing at the podium with a fake, practiced smile. "We are working with legal experts to resolve this misunderstanding," she said smoothly. Lucas stood at the back of the room, arms crossed. He had no intention of letting her manipulate her way out of this. "Misunderstanding," he called out, stepping forward. "You mean fraud?" All eyes turned to him. "You lied to this town," Lucas continued. "You forced people out of their homes. You stole land and used it as collateral for a $20 million loan. And now that the truth is out, you're calling it a misunderstanding." A murmur ran through the crowd. Victoria's face tightened, but she didn't respond. Then, from the audience, an elderly man stood up. "She forced me to sell my ranch," he said, voice trembling with anger. "Hit me with so many HOA fines I had no choice." Another woman stood. "She had my garden ripped out because it wasn't aesthetically pleasing." One by one, people began to speak. And just like that, Victoria Langley lost the town's support. The final strike. The next morning, Victoria's problems got worse. The FBI arrived in Willow Creek. With Daniel Grayson's help, Lucas had uncovered a paper trail of fraudulent transactions, illegal zoning changes, and embezzlement of HOA funds. Victoria Langley, the mayor, and several county officials were all under investigation. As Lucas walked out of the town courthouse, he spotted Victoria being led away in handcuffs. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Her face, once full of arrogance, was now pale with fear. "You should have walked away," Lucas muttered under his breath. A new beginning. Months later, the town had changed. The corrupt officials were gone, the stolen land was returned, and Lucas had helped form a new homeowners association, one that was fair and transparent. One evening, as he sat on his grandfather's porch, Evelyn Porter walked up with a pitcher of lemonade. "Your grandpa would be so proud," she said, smiling. Lucas looked out over the land. His land. For the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. The lesson learned. Lucas Bennett never asked to be a fighter. He had left Willow Creek years ago, thinking he would never return. But when corruption threatened his family's legacy, he had no choice but to stand his ground. He learned that justice isn't always served on a silver platter. Sometimes, you have to fight for it. The people behind Willow Ridge weren't just thieves. They were powerful figures who had gotten away with their crimes for years. But Lucas proved that even the most untouchable can fall when the truth is exposed. More importantly, he realized that one voice can start a movement. The town had been too afraid to stand up to Victoria Langley and her corrupt HOA for years. But once the truth came out, people found the courage to fight back. The Bennett Ranch was more than just land. It was history, family, and integrity, and it would never be stolen again. This isn't just Lucas's story. It's a reality for many homeowners across the country. Homeowners associations, developers, and even local governments sometimes abuse their power to force people out of their homes or manipulate property rights. If you're facing a similar situation, know your rights. Check your property records. Mistakes or fraud happen more often than you think. Don't ignore HOA abuses. If your HOA is issuing unfair fines, challenge them. Build a community. Corruption thrives when people feel isolated. Talk to your neighbors, share information, and stand together. Seek legal help. A good lawyer can make all the difference in fighting property fraud. Lucas Bennett's story is fictional, but the fight for justice is real. Sometimes the best way to win isn't by setting a trap. It's by exposing the truth for everyone to see.